Hi, I'm Jennet Ingle, the 5 Minute Reedmaker. If you are watching this on YouTube, would you go ahead and click subscribe and maybe notify, and that way you always know when I drop a new episode, and it makes it easier for other people to find my channel and become, in turn, better reedmakers and happier musicians. Thank you so much. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the long scrape, and I am responding to a question that I got in email. Thank you so much, Jackie, for sending this. Jackie says, I am revamping my whole reed making method, trying to follow along with your great videos. My question is about the long scrapes, first the top and then the bottom, where you scrape up to just the bottom of the top scrape. I'm finding I have a bump at that point. Likewise, if my initial top scrape is 10 millimeters, the top half of my heart is thinner than the bottom half. The attached photos show the issue. You can't see the photos. It's okay. The question really is, how are your top and bottom long scrapes meeting, and is that supposed to relate to the position of the heart? So, yes, the long scrape does relate to the position of the heart, but really, the long scrape really is about taking away as much cane as possible that is clearly not going to be part of the reed, so that by the time I actually begin constructing the reed and building in the rooftop and building in the windows, I've already done as much as I possibly can to get rid of wood that I don't need. And I'm trying to start vibration and set up the reed for success. Let me show you. Okay, here's my blank. It has bark on it. It has dried in this way. It is closed. It is about 73 millimeters long right now. What I'm going to do is begin by taking away, what I usually say is it's the top 7 or 8 millimeters, and I'm going to measure and see if that's actually the case. Yeah, looks like that scrape that I just did started at right around 64 millimeters, so it's in fact like the top 9-ish or so. But the thing that is important to notice, I think, is that I'm not going immediately thin when I start scraping here at 64. I'm just starting the slope. So if I could just diagram this real quickly. It is not the case that I have a heavy heart and then an immediate thinness right here at my 64 millimeter place. Rather, right around this place is where I start the slope. And I'm okay with this getting quite thin by the time it gets to the tip of the reed, because that's going to be really thin. But this region in here, 64-ish, 65-ish, that's just the beginning of the slope. In the same way that when you see a diminuendo in your music, you don't immediately start to play softly the second you see that diminuendo. This is your loud point, and then you begin to get softer. So with that being the case, I'm taking my top 8 or 9, I guess, millimeters, and I am being very conscientious about sloping outward. So the right plane and the left plane are different, and maybe we'll be able to see, if I can find my focus, that it's thicker in the center of this little area. Now, I'm not trying to put a rooftop in here. I'm just trying to get rid of as much wood, especially out toward the corners, as possible without actually doing any damage to this reed. Here it is on the other side. Right side, left side. And hopefully we can see that starting right where that scrape begins, we are beginning to thin that tip area without actually being thin yet. So that's to Jackie's point about feeling like this area, which is ultimately going to be the top of the heart, we don't want that to be thin. The heart is important. And we don't want this area to be any thinner than anything else in the heart, because it's an important area. That would be an attic problem, and I have another video called The Attic, which might help with that. But then Jackie's other concern was when we scrape up into this area, she was being left with a bump. So to that I say, don't do that. Let's scrape not in the same way that when we scrape at the tip, We are not scraping to the tip of the reed. We are scraping through the tip of the reed. And the end point of your scrape is not at the tip. It is the sort of invisible vanishing point just beyond the tip. I always talk about just scraping all the way out onto my finger. And that's, this is the end point. Similarly, when we do this scrape in the windows and back, windows and heart, the end point of that scrape is not this exact moment where my bark ends. It's just past that. So coming back to my diagram, I would say that this scrape that happens back here is going to roughly there. And now I've just drawn a lump, but I don't mean a lump. That's just where my scrape is headed. So I'm scraping through that end point into the top. And what I should see is almost no difference here because I'm not touching the bark. I'm leaving my rails very safely. And on the side here where I've scraped, I can see that this is it's sloping slightly, and then this is sloping more. But I don't have a big lump right there, and I don't have a sudden abrupt thinness here. And, if you've worked with me on reed making at all, in my reed club, in Zero to Reedmaker, in any other context, you'll know that I talk all the time about slope. I think it's one of the most important things in a reed, because the reed is all slopes and stops. We want it to be thinner at the side than in the center. We want it to be thinner at the top than at the base of the tip here. We need there to be a stop between the tip and the heart to slow the vibrations and to control them. So we have a stop ultimately here. We need the heart to slow the vibrations down, and then we need some slope in this area as well, right? So all of that is the case, but right here in the context of the long scrape, everything is pretty smooth. We're not doing anything terribly abrupt. The pencil is, showing you where my rooftop is ultimately going to be, but I scraped from just a little bit behind that, and I scraped to just a little bit past that in my two halves of my long scrape. So hopefully that makes sense. If I've done my job well, let me keep it in this frame so there's no hanky-panky. If I've done my job well, this should beep just a little tiny bit because I've thinned it enough at the tip to allow that to happen. Little tiny bit, almost not at all, but that's fine for me because of course I haven't done anything yet. But it'll be easy for me from here to build in my rooftop, my tip, my heart, my windows. I hope that has been helpful. This has been a 5-minute Reedmaker lesson. You can follow these short videos right here on YouTube. You can subscribe if you wish. I hope you will. And if you need to reach me to order Reeds Arcane, to order a copy of my book, The Happiest Musician, or to ask me a question that I might be able to answer in a future 5-minute Reedmaker episode, you can find me at jennetingle.com. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.